So, Oshrat, are you ready?
I am now.
Excellent.
Okay. Hi. Welcome
Let me
to
give
this
you the
episode.
control
Yes, thank you.
and go for it.
Okay. Hi, and welcome to this AppSec meetup. We're going to start with a warm-up because I said I wanted it to be interactive, and I'm going to make you be interactive. My question here is, are you in CVE shock, or have you ever been in CVE shock? And there's a poll out there, so I'll give you a few minutes to think about it, recollect things that you may have wanted to forget, and answer that. And then we will go on. The poll is up. So
Can you all see it? Excellent. Yeah, we start seeing some answers.
Nice.
Okay, we already have 10 people answering the poll. $11 and more. People just joined. So for those of you who just joined, we just put up a meetup poll that will basically kick out the first presentation. The question that Oshrat asked is, are you CVE shocked?
But some of you maybe don't even know what CVE shock is. So you're not completely off the hook. It's just a delay. So let's talk about what CVE shock is. Leo Di Donato of Falco Notoriety, and if we were to go under the covers of Falco, then eBPF, tweeted last year, CVE shock, the state of total helplessness when facing the overwhelming list of CVEs returned by vulnerability scanners. So the poll is still up. And if you have an answer now and you didn't have one before, please add it here. While I tell the urban legend that the CTO of ARMO, Ben Hirschberg, was giving a talk about CVE shock that Leo Di Donato probably was watching, and this is where the tweet came from originally. So, oh, wow, that skipped a lot. I'm missing a slide? Okay.
I don't think so, but for the time being, let me quickly, by the way, give the results. So we have 21 attendees already responded. Right now, by the way, it's really equal. So we have 7 of them said yes, some of them no, and some of them are uncertain, so they don't know basically.
Okay,
which is really interesting. Oh, now we have, by the way, one more that didn't decide yet. So we have 8 already saying I don't know.
Okay, so just keep in mind, and we shall go. We'll be talking about CVE shock and how to avoid it as we. Am I in control? Because I see another mouse on the screen.
You are in control.
Okay, because the slides are flipping through faster than. Okay, there we go. So today we'll be talking about uncovering vulnerabilities from public images and pinpointing those that matter. All of this is to help us avoid CVE shock. I know it's a mouthful. Next time I'll find a really nice title to my presentation. But who am I? My name is Oshrat Nir. I'm head of product marketing at ARMO. I'm Oshrat N on all of the socials. So if you want to find me, talk to me, ask me questions, then I'm there for you. I am a storyteller. I live at the meeting point of technology and people, and I hope you enjoy the stories that I have to tell today. I am an open source enthusiast. I do believe in the power of community, in addition to the fact that transparency is really, really important. And I think those two things bring the greatest leaps in technology that are possible. I'm a yoga lover. yet I'm more flexible in mind than in body. And I am a lifelong learner. A lot of things interest me, and I will dive into them to enhance my knowledge of them. Let's start. Everybody uses public images. Public images are popular. This is the results of some research that Datadog did about the top container images running in Kubernetes. You may have heard of them, you may have used them, you may like them, you may not like them. But basically, they make lives easier because it's a package deal. You plug it in, it basically more or less starts working. The problem is that there are no free lunches. And these vulnerabilities will invariably appear in your lives with vulnerabilities, more or less. That's dependent on which you choose and when you choose them, and how deep your technical debt is. But before I go into what I'm actually going to talk about, I want to pause. Okay, pause over. Just kidding. And I'm going to talk about something else, because we're talking about CVE shock in general. CVE shock is a numbers game. It's that long list of CVEs that you get. But what does a CVE even entail in a day, in a day in a life sort of thing? I chose a doozy for you. Log4 shell, or log4j, as lots of people tend to call it, the log4j vulnerability. It was discovered. It was. I think everybody's heard of it, right? I mean, my dad heard of it. It's in mainstream media. And it affected everything from AWS to Minecraft. So even my kid was vulnerable to that. And it manifested in many ways, because log4j is sometimes kind of the first layer, but sometimes it's a few layers deep into your code. So you have to look for it. So some history and context. It was a 0-day vulnerability with a CVSS score of 10 out of 10. I'll leave the explanation of what a CVSS score to Gal later on. And this is a teaser for you to stay for his talk at the end. It was made public on December 9th, 2021. And its patch became available on December 13th, 2021. That's nice, 4 days, great job, right? Nice, Apache, great work. The thing is that it invariably wasn't patched everywhere on December 13th, 2021. And as I mentioned before, it's widely used and it's fundamental and it's really, really hard to find. So how did companies deal with log4j? There are a few levels of dealing with it, and they go from simple to very, very complex, from relatively quickly to months of work. The simplest way, system update, you're good. The next way is patching, but patching requires finding the patch, implementing the patch, testing the patch, seeing that it didn't break anything, and moving on. And as I mentioned before, and I'll reiterate, log4j is all over the place. So it's pretty hard to identify every place you need to run that patch. And after you run a patch, you run a build, et cetera, et cetera. I'm pretty sure Ori's going to go into that in his talk. So I won't steal his thunder. The last thing was sometimes you have to just remove it manually from the code. And that means not the security person, possibly not the DevOps or platform engineer, but the devs themselves that have a day job and they have their goals and they need to deliver something and they don't want to stop in order to do security. And they have to sift through code, find that code, remove it, see if it needs some sort of replacement, build everything up again. Running a build can sometimes take hours, sometimes take half a day or more. and make sure that everything's working. So as we said, it's not as simple as a slide on a deck that you will see later on. But what I want to say, last thing about Log4 Shell is that many companies, among them a customer of a company that I worked for at the time, decided that there were places that they weren't going to even patch it. And why is that? After their research, they found that this vulnerability doesn't really expose them. So there's no point in putting in all of that work that I mentioned, that could kind of be from hours to days and months, to patch something that doesn't need patching because it doesn't expose you. So what the point here is that vulnerability images don't equal workload exploits. And working under that assumption, at the ARMO security researchers did some research on the most common images that are used. We saw that slide from Datadog. There are many images that are used by many people. So our research subjects ran the gamut of, Redis, Elastic, Nginx, Grafana, Argo, many things that we all know and love and maybe use every day. I have to put in a caveat here. Everything we say about relevancy has to do with context. Does it expose me or does it not expose me? And this is a very, I won't say personal because organizations aren't people, but this is a very specific thing. And in our case, we were running Minikube 127 over Kubernetes 127. And we ran this maybe a month ago. And all of this is to say that vulnerabilities are a moving target. It depends on when and what you're implementing where. And of course, in our case, we have 3 databases. I seriously doubt you aren't using 3 databases in your production. So consider Redis. Redis we tested Redis, and the vulnerabilities came out with about 83 I think it's exactly 83 vulnerabilities. And when we scanned it for relevant vulnerabilities, we found 14. That's an 83% reduction. I know 83 and 83 seems weird, but it kind of worked out that way. And when you go to look at which vulnerabilities you're going to patch, I do recommend that you look at the right side of the graph rather than the left side of the graph, because those are the ones that expose you. Even if they are lower in score, medium, for instance, I would still advise looking at those first and patching or learning about those first in order to check your exposure, because hackers know a lot of things. And one of the things that they know is the fact that organizations tend to solve the highest scoring vulnerabilities first. So if you have a relevant vulnerability of medium score, not that scary, that might be the place that exposes you, because a nefarious, malicious actor would come in and say, okay, they're probably working on patching the critical ones. I'll go a little lower and see how I can get in there and do my stuff. Okay, but wait, that was 1 out of 10, right? So let's look at the other 9. Some additional results. We can see from this slide is that different images act differently. So again, no assumptions, and we do recommend scanning daily in order to ensure that you actually know what's going on. And if we look at this, we can still see that when we check for relevance, there's a drastic reduction in the number of vulnerabilities we need to look at, which is great because that is the magic bullet for CVE shock, because it's like, oh, I don't have this whole pie I need to deal with. I can only deal with, I don't know, 25% or 6% of those. And then I sift through those first. We can see that not all databases are created equal. We tested 2 databases. One has more vulnerabilities than the other. This is not to say that this should be the criteria that you choose databases according to, because as I mentioned before, vulnerabilities are a moving target, and relevancy is contextual. So please don't see this as a recommendation for any database whatsoever. And yes, this is getting a little tedious. You're seeing a similar slide for the 3rd time, but I promised 10 images. So I need to stand by what I say. And then there's Murphy's Law. With all the other images, what we saw is that relevancy reduces the number of vulnerabilities you need to be looking at by a significant amount. I said 60% before, because if I were to claim, I don't know, 75 or 90, you'd think I was off my rocker. So yeah, and Grafana is the one that changes that mean. And here there are close to 80% of relevant vulnerabilities, and only 21% that are not relevant, but that still cuts it down by 20%. And again, contextual, possibly in your setup, it'll look different. So basically what we set out to prove was, if a vulnerability in an image does not equal a workload exploit, then you can be looking only at relevant vulnerabilities, those that actually expose you. Now, as I mentioned, since not all CVEs are relevant, check those that are relevant first. This is not to say that you should be ignoring all the other ones. That's a bad security practice, and I will not be quoted as saying that. You should be aware of all of your vulnerabilities. The thing is that prioritization by relevancy increases your impact on your security posture immediately. So out of the 83 vulnerabilities in Redis, in this version, and on my setup, the 14 that came out as relevant would be the first I'd be looking at. And again, this is a personal thing, and it has to do with the business at hand and with the risk appetite of the organization, and whether, I don't know, do you have a process where you look at negligible ones or not? There's many things around this. The thing is that relevancy brings that long list of CVEs down by, in this case, 83%. So I see that Sonali has asked how to prevent this. How to prevent what? I'm sorry. Can you kind of give me more context to the question, and I'll be happy to answer it. So my conclusion here is, A, we know that using public images exposes you to vulnerabilities, but those are modern and open source software development practices. It makes things faster, and we want to deliver faster in order to enjoy business benefits faster. How do I prevent vulnerabilities? Wow. You can write everything all by yourself if you want to prevent all vulnerabilities, but that'll take so long. And maybe it's not even worth the effort, because as we saw today, not all vulnerabilities are created equal. So sometimes there are vulnerabilities you don't care that you have. Does that answer your question? I'll continue with the conclusion.
Can I also ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry for disturbing you in the middle. But I would like to ask you, but also Gal, Ori, maybe Lior, and by the way, even the audience, even the attendees. I mean, I know that you cannot speak or can't speak, we won't hear you, but you can even raise your hand or write something in the chat. What is your personal experience when it comes to CVE shock? By the way, if you're familiar with the term CVE fatigue instead, that's also fine. Just for those that say, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out how many people don't know if they actually suffer it. But what is your personal experience? Did you see a dramatic increase in number of CVEs, or that you have in your systems in the past couple of years? How do you handle it?
Is it open for us as well?
Yeah. I said everyone, even the
Okay.
attendees can, shout out via chat or something.
I can also share that I had to deal with hundreds of CVEs, and unfortunately, we use the most common tool, Microsoft Excel, and we're trying to do it as the best we can. But I found myself just reviewing them manually, and luckily, I can say that you find many duplicates. So out of 100 CVEs, you have 15 which are unique and other are duplicates. So you just need to answer 15 of them. But to think like that this is going to be my work for the next month and I'm going to face thousands or more, it's quite intimidating as well. Yeah.
Yo, let me ask you, because I remember you leading the SSDLC in Amdocs, and later on you became an information security manager, or the CISO of Perimeter 81, which I'm pretty sure, as any other company, you definitely have also vulnerabilities, and you have to, attend them, because, you are supporting network, secure network connections. Did you ever had such an issue, or did management always supported at the buy-in of management to handling CVEs to whatever extent it requires, or up to a degree, and then again you had to prioritize over and over again?
Mm-hmm. So I think from a CISO perspective, you need to manage the risk. So eventually you are getting a lot of CVEs from different sources. Some could be from a penetration test, or through some tools, scanning tools, security scanning tools, or a risk assessment that you are doing, and you need to prioritize. Prioritize meaning that first you need to have an internal prioritize from security point of view, in order to recommend the organization what would be the correct level of risk acceptance. Because eventually you don't want to, you won't fix all the defects. You will not fix all the low and medium. You will focus on the high and critical, but eventually you need to have some baseline in your organization. And although there is a CVE out there, sometimes it's not relevant. Sometimes it will be from prioritization of the organization, very complicated to mitigate. And then you, as a security professional, you need to start and build security controls, maybe a mitigation plan, or some roadmap, because from prioritization point of view, you are always not aligned, or should keep on the business path or the business requirement that should be prioritized against some security requirements. And those are important, and those are important. But you need to first bring to the organization as a CISO what is relevant and what is not. And as Ori said, maybe you will need to fix one point, or update one package of a vulnerable, some false component vulnerable, and then you will mitigate many security issues that was found in the system, or build some mitigation plan. But it's very focused on the organization, the system, and the risk posture of the organization. Because I don't know, I'm working currently in a cybersecurity company. Security is very important for us. This is our bread and butter. However, maybe some other organization has a lower risk posture, and other maybe has some higher, because they are in military grade, or any other banks, insurance company, and others that has also regulation related to this kind of of risk acceptance or risk management. But yes, you need to be very careful on what you are fixing. I also support on what Oshrat said. First of all, you need to have visibility. But next, you need to prioritize and not just the high when the CV is telling you this is a high and critical defect, that not necessarily the first thing that you will focus on.
Yeah, thanks. And we have a question in the chat. Mayan Friedman asked, can you recommend some rule of thumb for deciding which CVEs are the relevant ones, or how to rate them as high, medium, etc.?
Can I answer this one?
1 second.
And then Vino?
Well, Gal,
go ahead.
this is a great segue, because Gal will be talking exactly about that. And also, I wanted to mention something kind of only talking about using spreadsheets and doing things manually. There are scanners out there that help you sort these things out within a UI with a set of rules that, again, you can control according to stuff that Lior mentioned in terms of risk appetite and compliance requirements, and many of those other things that will help you. But stay for Gal's demo, because I'm sure that will enlighten you. Gidi, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that you can play, just play a game to choose what to fix first. As a joke. But I have to say that Ori mentioned, unfortunately. Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely a strategy. I mean, I play the lottery all the time, but not with other people's information.
Again, as long as the attackers are going to play the same game and get the same results, that should be fine. But because we know that it's not exactly the case, we should definitely find better ways to do it. And later on, by the way, I assume that Ori will share from his experience and knowledge, what should be the way to do it, methodological way. And Gal will, again, give your saying about how to handle it.
So in conclusion,
okay,
using public images does expose you to vulnerabilities, but as I mentioned earlier, with regard to the question, it's a cost-benefit sort of situation where if it speeds up your development process and your deployments, and you can move your business faster, then it's a cost you must be thinking about and be willing to take, or else you'll be very slow compared to your competitors. The results of CVE of vulnerability scanners may cause CVE shock. And relevant vulnerabilities point to that small subset that needs to be addressed first in order to create the biggest impact. And for you, Mayan, just one last thing is you can find ARMO on LinkedIn and on Twitter. You can find Kubescape, which is the open source sandbox project that ARMO is a main maintainer of, which is a scanner. And you can find that on GitHub. You can try out ARMO and see what it can do for you. And again, you'll maybe Gal's demo will be able to make you even more interested in trying that. So thanks so much for your attention and for your participation. That was great. And I will hand over back to Gidi.
Thank you very, very much, Oshrat. So let's quickly go to maybe a few more questions that we see here. Let me see. So besides the one that you answered to Maya, by the way, guys, if you have more questions, also try to use the Q&A section, not just chat. Just from our own ease of looking into all the questions and answering them one by one. Okay.
Oshrat, can I also ask you a question, Oshrat?
Yeah.
I mean, as I said that I manually reviewed CVEs. The CVEs is an output, as you mentioned, also some scanners which scan the system. So, like from my experience in big organization, they don't want to do a lot of effort, so they are using the scanners to use automatically to save the effort, and then they found themselves needs to manually review the output and see that. So when you think like of the benefits, then do you think that is it beneficial to use these tools? Like how do you see this when you see like this circle?
Okay, so ARMO is a company that lives in the DevOps world. I know this is a security meetup, but we really care about that friction between DevOps and security, and the fact that we don't want it to exist, because we do believe that shifting security left is an important thing, and that DevOps should be really involved in security from day one, just because it makes things faster again, and it makes things cheaper. And DevOps believe, or if you want, system reliability engineers, but all of this in the world of Kubernetes, there's this credo of automate everything. So if you need to do something more than once, it should be automated. And then there's the build it or buy it sort of conversation, where using open source tools is kind of in the middle of that, because you can build your own solution that is tailor-made for you. But if, I don't know, we were talking about Amdocs before, okay? Amdocs is in telco business. They're not in the security business. So why would they build a security scanner? I mean, I guess they can, but why would they? And then there's the option of taking the open source solutions and using them and building kind of a security platform that is based on open source solutions. That's great. And the open source community is vibrant and forward thinking, and they bring lots of experience from different, from all kinds of, markets and many different, skill sets and different kind of needs. So that's great. And that's why I love open source so much. The drawback of that is that it's slightly less hard than building it by yourself, because ultimately the open source tools provide pieces of the puzzle. So for instance, if you were to take an open source scanner, you would need the results somewhere. So you'd by default get it in a CLI, but you might want a dashboard. So if you want a dashboard, you go back to Grafana. Sorry, Grafana. You might go back to Grafana, which is an open source solution for dashboards. So you have to build something out there and maintain it and make sure that it's free of CVEs. So you need to keep it up to date, and you need to scan that too and take care of that. So depending on the size and the talent you have, it might make sense to do it, or it might not. And then there comes the buy piece. And when you buy, you can choose a very proprietary solution that will get extremely tailored to what you need. Cost will probably be similar to your needs. Or you can buy an off-the-shelf solution that kind of is an enterprise wrapper around an open source solution, and you get the best of both worlds. So again, just like risk appetite, this is again the same sort of discussion around what organizations need and want and are willing to invest in. So that was a long answer to a short question, but I hope I answered it.
Let me ask you another one, Oshrat, that I saw the audience is asking. So while some CVs more relevant and some are not, you partially answered it to Marianne when saying how to decide which CV is eventually relevant. But why is that the case? I mean, why do we even have high, mediums, and lows?
Oh, so those are two separate questions, by the way, and God will be talking about this extensively. But the high, medium, and low and critical comes from the CVSS scoring, and God will explain who and why that was created and what for. And the relevancy part has to do with eBPF, has to do with the idea that if okay, maybe I'll take a step backwards. I don't know how many people in this meetup use containers, but many of the containers are full of junk because of a historic thing around how Docker builds containers, and Docker containers are the most prevalent in the market. So there's a lot of junk there that doesn't actually get used. It could be doesn't necessarily get used in runtime. It could get used in development, in design time, before runtime. So stuff that doesn't get used in runtime doesn't necessarily expose you. And again, Gal will go deeper into this with an explanation, but that's kind of a high level answer to that question.
Excellent. I want to do something really, well, not sure if we can call it nasty, but because in the first time we did the poll, we actually got the answers are give or take the same. Let me even share the results so everyone can actually see it. I hope that everyone can see it now. So basically, it's give or take the same. Besides the last person that voted, I don't know. It changed change it completely or not completely, but they changed it a bit. Now that you shared what is CVE shock and much more about it, maybe it will help people change their answers. So let's give it a try. Let's try to rerun it, to relaunch the meetup and see if we get different results now, or especially different results related to the I don't know. So more yeses or nos. What do you say? By the way,
Yes,
any
please. I'm
bets?
really interested. Yeah,
Any bets in the crowd? Let's give it a try. So you should now see the poll again. Again, it just takes a second. So, okay, numbers are coming up. Let's see. I'm anxious to see what will happen. We have 36 attendees responding. Okay, 16 of them already responded. Come on, guys. Those that haven't responded yet, that's the time to respond. So let us know what you think. Now we have more no's than yeses, by the way.
Wow.
53%, 55% say no. By the way, I wonder if, and okay, later on we can do it via chat or via hand raising or something like this. How many don't have Kubernetes at all, for example, or don't use containers? Again, CVEs are also outside of containers, but in containerized areas, definitely we see it's not dramatic increase. It's what is more bigger than dramatic? More dramatic than dramatic.
Ginormous.
Enormous.
10x.
Or maybe enormous. Yeah. I wonder if we have like critical, high, medium, and low for such words. Okay, so we have the same thing. So 22 that already responded. This time it completely different. I mean, okay, let me end the poll and okay, 1 second. There is one more person that actually voted now. So 23 this time voting. But again, it wasn't changed by the vote, but by one vote in this case. More no's than yeses and I don't knows. And by the way, only 2 say still don't know. Before that, it was 8 of them. So I think just the first 3, 4 slides of explaining what CVE shock completely changed everyone's mind. So thanks for that, Oshrat. Okay, let me share, ending the poll now and sharing the results. So if you can see it on your screen now, 7 people, which is 29% of the responders, 24% responders all in all, said yes, CVE shock is their current status. 63% of them, which is 15 of the 24 responders, said no. Again, I wonder if you would like to answer via the chat or via raising hand or something like this, if you are using Kubernetes or not. That would be really, really interesting. And only 2, 80%, only 2 out of 24 said, I don't know, still don't know. And I'm not sure, by the way, whether Oshrat is related to, or yes, maybe they missed the 2, 3 slides that you explained it, or by the way, you need to, I don't know, improve your explanation. That's another type of
next
poll.
meetup.
Did you yeah, absolutely.
I'll do better, I
so
promise.
That's really interesting. And again, guys, if you guys in the end, if you are willing to share via the chat or raising hand or something like this, if you are using or not any type of containers in your organization, that would be really interesting to see. The number of yeses and knows maybe it will change.